Se fue de llorón a Dubái. Salinas Pliego no aguantó. Habló mal de México y de Claudia Sheinbaum. Parte de lo que habló allá en esta conferencia, donde le preguntan sobre los cárteles, que si son terroristas, habla sobre México, Argentina, defiende a Trump. O sea, ¿qué le pasa a este señor?
Decision are very perverse. So Trump is saying, because Mexico is taken over by cartels, and because Mexico is taking fentanyl and putting into our poor young people's bodies, we must do something. And the first thing he does is put a wall and tariffs, and the next thing he does is throw some bombs into the cartel land. It's a very bad situation,
yeah,
and our government has done a lot to deserve this, because our government has not been strict in controlling the gangland violence that my country is suffering. But that is a very bad way to start talking about business opportunities in Latin America.
I figured that it is topical. And I just, when you think about it from the perspective of sentiment in Latin America, clearly the threat of terrorists is hanging over there. But maybe let's just talk about
Bienvenidos amigos a una nueva información más. Mi nombre es Jesús Domínguez, reportándoles para Estadística Política. Antes que nada, te deseo que tengas un excelente día. De igual manera te invito a que le des me gusta al video y lo compartas en tus redes sociales. Pues amigos y amigas, se fue de llorón a Dubái. Salinas Pliego no aguantó y habló mal de México y de Claudia Sheinbaum. Por eso Salinas Pliego es tendencia en redes sociales, como podemos ver aquí en X. Ahí está, miren, Salinas Pliego. Bueno, pues precisamente por esta conferencia. Dice Salinas Pliego, mi participación en el World Gov Summit 2025, subtitulada y completa en X, dice, si les gusta compartan mi publicación con sus amigos para que los chairitos lloren un rato. Recuerden que por cada vez que un sordo se enoje, un angelito se gana sus alas. O sea, la aberración que sale a decir Ricardo Salinas Pliego. Ahora bien, Ricardo Salinas Pliego, sí, en efecto, está ahí en Dubái. Aquí publicó una foto recientemente poniendo lo siguiente. Como no les alcanza la arena en tierra, se pusieron a sacar más del mar y construyeron la palmera Jumeirah. Aquí se las dejo en la foto. Se ve a la distancia cómo se vendió toda. Ahora están haciendo la segunda palmera, la Jabel Ali, y está inmensa, dice, ¿no? Seguramente la van a vender muy rápido porque hoy en día los Emiratos Árabes Unidos son una mezcla entre el nuevo Hong Kong, nueva Suiza y nuevo Singapur, pero todo junto. Sin duda, un gran lugar para invertir y hacer todo tipo de negocios. Saludos a mis amigos de Monterrey, a ver cuándo despiertan, dice, ¿no? Y bueno, esto es lo que publica Ricardo Salinas Pliego. Y esto fue lo que dijo en esta entrevista. Le empiezan a preguntar sobre los aranceles, los cárteles, los terroristas. Hasta habla de Argentina. Habla más bonito de Argentina que de México. Siento que México pues le ha creado toda esa riqueza a él y toda su familia. Vamos a escuchar el siguiente segmento de video.
I'm going to start with the fact that you are one of the most influential industry and business leaders in Latin America and also in Mexico.
Yes.
And for anyone who's been following the news the last couple of weeks, Mexico has been in the news quite a lot because President Trump has set his sights on the country and has floated the possibility of imposing tariffs with a little bit of a delay introduced. Let me just ask you, as an industry leader, as an influential business person from the region, how does the threat of tariffs affect your ability to conduct business and to make decisions about your business operations?
Yes. Well, Mexico is in a very difficult position right now because of this threat from the Trump administration to basically throw away the free trade agreement and treat us like a pariah, like a divorced woman. Boom, I don't want to see you again. Close the wall, close the border. If that happens, it's a huge shock for my country, Mexico, because for the past 30 years, our model has been integration into the North American market with Canada, the US, and Mexico. By the way, Trump is divorcing both Mexico and Canada.
Yeah.
So he's throwing away the North American Free Trade Agreement, or threatening with that. And if that comes to happen, the effect in Mexico will be huge unemployment, because our manufacturing sector for export is huge. And we do $700 billion of trade with the US.
Yeah.
It would be a very, very bad impact.
Yeah.
So we don't know if it's going to happen or not, but the uncertainty is not helping.
No, it doesn't help at all, anywhere. Do you think...
And I want to say, why is this happening? So the politics of the decision are very perverse. So Trump is saying, because Mexico is taken over by cartels, and because Mexico is taking fentanyl and putting into our poor young people's bodies, we must do something. And the first thing he does is put a wall and tariffs, and the next thing he does is throw some bombs into the cartel land. It's a very bad situation, and our government has done a lot to deserve this, because our government has not been strict in controlling the gangland violence that my country is suffering. But that is a very bad way to start talking about business opportunities.
That it is topical. And when you think about it from the perspective of sentiment in Latin America, clearly the threat of tariffs is hanging over there. But maybe let's just talk about what opportunities and growth you have witnessed.
Yes.
And also, let's also just remind everybody that Latin America is a huge continent, and you're talking about so many different countries with different prerogatives. So maybe let's just start there.
So Latin America is a very big place, number one. From Mexico City to Buenos Aires, it takes longer to fly to Buenos Aires than it takes to get to London, just so you get a dimension of the thing. So London is actually closer to Mexico City. Then there's 350 million people in the region, which Mexico has 130 million. It's a very young country. Most of Mexicans are under 26 years old. 50% are under 26 years old. So that's human capital, and it's very valuable, because the attitude of people is that if you work hard, you get ahead. They're not waiting around for handouts from the government, though they're getting that more and more every day. Now, the problem is, it's such a diverse region that it's not really productive to talk about Latin America, because what happens in Brazil or Argentina or Colombia or Chile is very different from what happens in Mexico. And so the first step for anybody who's interested is to get to know people in the private sector where you can do business. And that's why we're here, and we're very thrilled to see what's going on in the Emirates, especially in Dubai. It's really a wonderful country and a wonderful place to do business.
Not that dissimilar in terms of natural resources, being rich with natural resources, young demographics, youth. Yes. So a lot of dynamics are actually in common between this part of the world and Latin America.
Not only that, but also there's a lot of family business in this region. And in Latin America, also, most companies are family-owned, with the exception of the government sector.
I want to ask you a question specifically about Argentina. And the reason I bring up Argentina is there's been an interesting economic case over the past year or so. The advent of Javier Milei. He was an outsider. He was a very unorthodox economist, and he came in with big plans. He literally, his motto was "No hay plata," there is no money left. And he came in with his chainsaw, and he wanted to cut down the size of the public sector. And you fast forward, 12, 14 months in, and a lot of the metrics, if you look at the Argentinian economy, are actually moving in the right direction. Yes. My question for you is this a template that can be applied to other Latin American countries, or is it specific to Argentina?
No, it cannot be applied. It's specific to Argentina. Argentina is like the typical, alcoholic, drunk, that goes to the bottom, ends in the gutter, in the filth, and one day decides, I'm not going to drink anymore. And when that moment comes of realization that that is the wrong way, then the opportunity for someone like Milei to come out. So the problem with the other countries is they've not touched bottom. It's the alcoholism is excessive government spending, excessive government intervention, way excessive regulations. And what this creates is a bad condition in the economy. It drags people down, creates poverty. This is of Latin American countries. Yeah. And until they hit rock bottom, there's no opportunity for a person like Milei. I love Milei. I know him well. We invited him to Mexico 10 years ago. I'm a big libertarian. I believe in freedom. I believe in free enterprise. And I believe that it's through freedom that creates innovation, that creates competition, how you get to prosperity. It's definitely not through government intervention. And that is why the leadership of the UAE is so important as an example of what can be done right. I mean, this country is barely 50 years old. It used to be just sand. And now Hong Kong is way behind, this way on top. This is the way, you know.
Yeah, yeah.
And it's because you have good government policies that allow people to do things.
Do you think that there's going to be something of so-called, quote, Milei envy around other countries in Latin America, and that it will influence the direction of travel for Latin American politics, for the elections that are going to be taking, crucial elections taking place in the next couple of years?
I mean, his presence is definitely having an influence. And even in my country, the work that is done through social media is so important to get people aboard. What we're talking here is what's needed is a revolution of the culture revolution. And we call it the cultural battle. So what is the cultural battle? And I'll tell you like this. The cultural battle that is being fought across the world, not only in my country or Latin America, or in here, is between left and right, between slavery and freedom, between individual initiative and government orders, between achievement and poverty, prosperity and poverty. That is a cultural battle. And we need to face it head on because, unfortunately, the leftists have totally appropriated the narrative that they do good for the people, when, in fact, what we have is tremendous poverty as evident in Cuba, in Nicaragua, in Venezuela, and approximately, you know, Colombia. It's bad policy.
Some of what you're saying sounds a little bit like a certain gentleman called Elon Musk, who's been saying the same things in the U.S., similar things in the U.S. But what do you make of having a tech titan be so actively involved as an advisor to the U.S. president?
Yeah. Well, I think good for him. I think if he hadn't bought X, things would be very different because X was totally captured by the left. And in the cultural battle, we were dead because you would be deplatformed immediately if you said things like I'm saying today. And it's thanks to Musk's investment of, I don't know how many billion. I don't think it was such a good investment, personally, in the business side. But from a political side and from what it means for humanity, it's amazing to be able to have free speech.
Yeah.
And free speech means free. It doesn't mean that somebody can censor you. So you have to be very, very clear on that. And I think at the end of the day, Musk, other than being a genius at business, which he is, obviously, he also is deeply caring about what kind of humanity we want. And I think he is pro-freedom, and that should be a big step in the right direction for anybody who believes in freedom, is supporting that.
Yeah. Do you worry that if you look at the world holistically right now, the fact that we're moving towards a more multipolar world with different blocks around the world, different prerogatives, as I spoke about at the beginning, the fact that the U.S. seems to be pursuing an America First policy. Is that a negative contribution
negative,
for trade?
Because what we need is integration.
Right.
Like, again, the example of the Emirates here is very good. They have tolerance for different cultures, for different points of views, but they're open and they trade with one and the other. Unfortunately, in America, there's this thing called jingoism. And it's very negative. I mean, we've been neighbors with the States for a long time, so we know a lot about American politics. And it's very difficult to deal with them because they're so ignorant of what goes on in the world. You know? So they're Americans always look inside. And all the problems seem to come from outside. They don't own any of the problems.
I'm going to take you on slightly other tact, not specific to Latin America, but you have been very vocal on this. You're a big Bitcoin believer.
Yes.
And so let's say you're...
Bueno, está ahí, ¿no? Donde habla de Musk y también acerca de todo esto, Argentina, los cárteles, en fin. Ricardo Salinas Pliego dice ser o tener parecer respuesta para todo. Pero miren con quién se junta Ricardo Salinas Pliego. Publicando o dándole publicidad a esta conferencia de Chumel Torres. O sea, para Ricardo Salinas Pliego, Chumel Torres es una persona a seguir. Chumel Torres dice, esto va a pasar, no mames, dice. Harvard me invitó a participar en una serie de conferencias para sus estudiantes. Nos vemos en febrero, Kennedy School, dice, ¿no? Y pone aquí Chumel Torres, ¿no? Sábado, 22 de febrero. Comediante, youtuber, presentador, escritor e ingeniero. Y le pone aquí Ricardo Salinas Pliego. perseverancia, congruencia y buenos contenidos. Las cosas buenas les pasan a quien lucha por ellas, los otros que se revuelquen en su oscura suciedad. O sea, es real que Ricardo Salinas Pliego ha visto los programas de Chumel y dice que son buen contenido. Si para eso Ricardo Salinas Pliego es un muy buen contenido, yo pienso que pues Ricardo Salinas Pliego podrá tener la riqueza y todo eso, pero eso no le da la máxima inteligencia. Entonces, yo he visto los programas de Chumel y la verdad, todo lo que comenta ahí, porque obviamente está cargado en denostaciones contra la derecha, contra la izquierda, perdón. Entonces, ok, entiendo tu punto de vista de que no compartas la misma ideología que tú, pero tampoco trates de defenderla con estupideces o tonterías, porque Chumel Torres ha desinformado, ha hecho fake news, le han dicho, hasta lo han desinformado de lo que él pensaba que era, porque una vez dijo que él ser de izquierda y dice, no, bueno, que es derecha, que lo corrigieron, ¿no? Le dicen, ¿qué prefieres, el colectivismo o el individualismo? El individualismo, sí, eres derecha. Ah, bueno, entonces, sí soy de derecha, dice, porque decía él que era liberal, ¿no? Chumel Torres. Si esta es la clase de ídolos que tiene Salinas Pliego, la verdad, está muy, pero muy perdido, ¿no? Y vean, como siempre, Salinas Pliego, pues insultando y denostando. Como siempre, los prianistas, utilizando insultos. Aquí está este David Páramo, que le pone aquí, Paconazo Taibó es un endejo de mier. Vean lo que escribe. Ahí está. Es este achichicle de que sale con Ciro Gómez Leiva. Ahí está. David Páramo, este. Padre del análisis superior, dice, ¿no? Bueno, sale a insultar a Ignacio Taibó y le dice aquí Salinas, no amigo, Taibó no es un endejo, es un perverso zurdo de mier, hijo de su rep. Ahí lo dice. De los que creen tener derecho a todo, hasta sobre las vidas de los demás y por supuesto tener el derecho a vivir a expensas del trabajo ajeno. Igual que la momia Sabina Berman, feos y frustrados al fin y al cabo. O sea, vean lo que sale a decir Ricardo Salinas Pliego. Pues amigos, esta es la información que les traigo por el momento. Como siempre, más adelante más videos. ¿Qué piensan al respecto? Deja tu comentario, dale me gusta al video, comparte en tus redes sociales, suscríbete a este canal. Estadística Política, activa la campanita para que tengan las notificaciones. Antes de retirarnos, les invito a dejar su poderoso like. Dejen en los comentarios su número de like. Suscríbete al canal, activa la campanita. Si no te llegan las notificaciones, recuerda que siempre van a haber videos nuevos todos los días. Cada vez que entres a YouTube, en el buscador pone Estadística Política y van a ver videos nuevos todos los días. Saludos a nuestro primer comentario del chat, a Deolegario Morales, hasta Edinburgh, Texas. Saludos. A Adriana Santoyo, Lupe Díaz, Víctor Sal, Meli Carmona, Felipe Rodríguez, saludos. Gregorio Romero, Caósfera, saludotes. A Gabriel Domínguez, Silvia Méndez, Alma Castañeda, Luna Takami, Suam, saludos. Luna Adriana, Meli, Silvia Méndez, saludos a Marta Laura Ávila, Lidia Ugalde, Vicente Luna Contreras, Petronila Panzona, Caósfera, saludos, gracias a los moderadores por su apoyo como siempre, saludotes. Carlos Lagunes, también saludos. Rufina Arias, saludos. Margarito Campo, Tutu Castro, saludotes. Pues amigos y amigas, Meli Carmona, Víctor Sal, Luna Takami, gracias a ustedes. Nos estaremos viendo en una próxima videoinformación. Que tengan un excelente día y recuerden que los números siempre sean exactos y no son fraude. Nos vemos en un próximo video.